In this video, I'm sharing with you my fingerstyle arrangement of Daniel. So let's begin with a demo and then we'll move into our tutorial. If you're enjoying this arrangement, please show my channel some love by giving this video a thumbs up. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, then welcome back. And if you're new here, then welcome. I'm Lara. I'm a musician and a composer, and I love to teach fingerstyle arrangements and song tutorials for all levels. If you'd like to support my channel and my teaching by joining my Patreon community, you'll gain access to several hundred PDF downloads, including fingerstyle tabs, song sheets, and songbooks. The link is down below in the video description. If you're not yet familiar with reading tablature, then see this video link above, where I'll help you to get started reading tabs. This arrangement is for low G tuning, and next in our tutorial, we'll walk through several sections of the song, step by step, including the song introduction and the first verse, to get you started. We begin our introduction on a C chord, with our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Then in measure 2, we go up to the 7th fret of the 1st string with our pinky, and then we'll come down to the 5th fret, 3rd fret. Here you can use your index finger or your middle finger, and we're going to end measure 2 on the 2nd fret of the 1st string. Now here I like to use my ring finger so that it's already in place for measure 3. We begin measure 3 on an F chord. So here we have our index finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string and our middle finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. Now we also have our ring finger still in place on the 2nd fret of the 1st string. Then we're going to open up the 1st string. Now keeping our index finger and middle finger in place, we'll finish measure 3 by picking strings 4, 3, and 2. In measure 4, we'll go up to the 8th fret of the 1st string, and then we'll come down to the 7th fret, 5th fret, and we'll end this measure on the 3rd fret. Now here I like to use my pinky for this note so that it's already in place for the chord that comes next to begin measure 5. Now this chord is a standard G chord with the addition of our pinky on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. So we have our index and middle fingers on the 2nd fret of strings 3 and 1, our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and our pinky on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Now it's important to have your middle finger in place here for this chord because we're going to lift up our pinky, picking the 2nd fret for the note that comes after this chord. Then we'll pick the open 4th string, 3rd string, and 2nd string. In measure 6, we're climbing a little bit higher, now up to the 10th fret of the 1st string, then down to the 8th fret, 7th fret, and 5th fret. And then in measure 7, we're going back to our standard C chord. Here we'll pick strings 1, 2, and 3 together, then the open 4th string, open 3rd string, and then we'll place down our index finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string. And then in measure 8, we'll lift up our index finger, picking the open 2nd and 3rd strings together, then the 4th string, 3rd string, and we'll place our index finger back down on the 1st fret of the 2nd string. Then in measure 9, we'll pick the open 2nd and 3rd strings together once more, and this concludes the song introduction. Now you can keep your ring finger in place on the 3rd fret of the 1st string through measures 7, 8, and 9. So in the second half of measure 9, we're going to pick the 1st string 3 times, and then we'll end this measure by picking strings 1, 2, and 3 together. Then in measure 10, we'll pick the same note 2 more times, and then strings 1, 2, and 3 again. Then we'll go down to the 2nd fret of the 1st string, then the open 1st string, and at the end of measure 10, we'll form a D minor chord shape. Here we have our index finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string and our ring and middle fingers on the 2nd fret of strings 3 and 4. We'll end measure 10 by picking strings 2 and 3 together. Then in measure 11, we'll pick the 4th string, 3rd string, then we're going to open up the 2nd string and place our index finger back down on the 1st fret. In measure 12, we'll lift our index finger up, picking the open 2nd string. Then we go to the 3rd string, and then we open up the 3rd string to end measure 12. In measure 13, we're going back to our G chord. We'll start this measure by picking strings 4, 3, and 2 together. Then we'll pick the 1st string twice, then strings 1, 2, and 3 together. And now we're going to pick the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Here I like to use my middle finger, and then we go up to the 5th fret with our pinky, then down to the 2nd fret with our index finger. And now we're halfway through measure 14. We're going down to the 5th fret of the 2nd string with our pinky, and then to the 3rd fret of the 2nd string with our middle finger. So here's how measures 13 and 14 look at a slow tempo. In measure 15, we're going up to the 7th fret of strings 1 and 2 using our ring finger and middle finger. Then we'll place down our pinky on the 8th fret of the 1st string, and we'll lift it up to go back to the 7th fret. And now we'll lift up our ring finger, placing down our index finger on the 5th fret of the 1st string. Our middle finger is still in place on the 2nd string, so here we'll pick strings 1 and 2 together, and then we'll place our ring finger back down on the 7th fret of the 1st string, and we'll lift it up to go back to the 5th fret, and we'll end measure 15 on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Now here I like to use my ring finger because next we have an A minor chord. So using our ring finger on the 1st string to end measure 15 makes it easier to place down our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string in measure 16. Here we'll pick strings 4, 3, and 2 together. Then we'll go up to the 1st string, and then we'll go up to the 5th fret of the 1st string, and we'll lift our pinky up to go back to the 3rd fret. And in measure 17, we'll begin with the open 1st string. Then we'll form our standard F chord, picking strings 4, 3, and 2. And now we'll go back to the 3rd fret of the 1st string, and then up to the 5th fret. And in measure 18, we'll go down to the 2nd fret of the 1st string. Here you can use either your index finger or your middle finger. And then we have the open 1st string, and then the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Here I'm using my ring finger, and we'll end measure 18 with the open 1st, 2nd, and 3rd strings together. Now for an easier option in measure 15, you can play only the notes on the 1st string. Now I'll demonstrate measures 15 through 18 at a slow tempo. In measures 19 and 20, we have a sequence of notes on the 4th string. Here I like to use my index finger on the 2nd fret, my ring finger on the 4th fret, and pinky on the 5th fret. Then we're going back to the 1st string, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret, and now moving into measure 21, we'll go up to the 7th fret with our pinky. Next Next we go down to the 2nd string, 8th fret with our pinky, and then to the 5th fret of the 2nd string using our index finger. In measure 22, we'll go back to the 8th fret of the 1st string, and then move down through frets 7, 5, and 3. I tend to use my index finger on the 5th fret, and then move it down to the 3rd fret. In measure 23, we're going to form a partial G chord, just on strings 2 and 3. We'll start by picking strings 3 and 4 together, then the 2nd string 3 times, and we'll end measure 23 going back to the 8th fret of the 1st string. Then we'll go down to the 7th fret, and then down to the 3rd fret, up to the 5th fret with our ring finger, and we'll finish measure 24 with our index finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string, picking strings 1, 2, and 3 together. In measure 25, we have all open strings. And then in measure 26, we'll go back to the 7th fret of the 1st string, down to the 5th fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret, and we'll end this measure on the open 1st string. In measure 27, we'll form our G chord, picking strings 2 and 3, then just the 2nd string, then the 1st string, and now we'll place our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string, and our pinky on the 5th fret. In measure 28, we'll lift up our pinky going back to the 3rd fret, then we'll go to the 2nd fret with our middle finger, back to the 3rd fret, and we'll end measure 28 on the 5th fret. Measure 29 begins the 2nd verse with open strings 4, 3, and 2, and then the melody is very similar to what we played in the 1st verse. Now one more thing I'd like to highlight is when we go up to the 15th fret in measure 58. We're going to use our pinky on the 15th fret of the 1st string. Then I like to use my middle finger on the 11th fret, then move my middle finger down to the 8th fret, and place my index finger on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. Then in measure 59, I like to slide my middle finger back one more fret to the 7th fret to play an arpeggio through all 4 strings. Then we'll finish measure 59 with open strings 4, 3, and 2, and we'll keep our middle finger in place for the beginning of measure 60. Then we'll use our ring finger on the 8th fret, our pinky on the 10th fret, and then our index finger on the 5th fret. In measure 61, we'll slide our index finger back to the 3rd fret, place our ring finger on the 5th fret, and then lift it up to go back to the 3rd fret. And then in measure 62, we'll form our G chord, picking strings 1, 2, and 3 together, and then strings 4 down to 1. So here are measures 58 through 62 at a slow tempo. For more of my easy fingerstyle arrangements and tutorials, see this playlist here. Have fun learning Daniel, and thanks for watching.